Welcome to the By Design Podcast, a podcast dedicated to game design. I'm your host, Mitchell, and I have here with me my co-host, Daniele.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back. Glad to start doing this again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. It's been quite some time since our first podcast, but we're back. It's only been 3 months, but we're back. This week we're focusing on Cyberpunk 2077 and Spider-Man, and its quote-unquote downgrade. So let's start this off with how do you feel about the new gameplay that was shown?
Really good, actually. Again, I saw, as I told you privately, I saw many people talking about this game after E3, and I was expecting something out of this world. I was expecting too much, maybe. So I was a little bit disappointed by the quality, but it's still it's a game in full development, so should be noted that the game will still change a lot, and they specified it many times during the gameplay session. But it's a good idea. I mean, the thing I liked the most about it was that everything in the interface made sense,
Like the heads-up display?
Yeah, it was. It made sense for it to be in first person, because everything in the interface is something really happening in that world. Like the girl, the main character, V. She had something in the eye that showed her the exact same interface we saw. So, it made sense.
So you're trying to say that with the first-person perspective, it really immerses you in the world.
Yeah, it does.
It really makes you feel like a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the thing was I was never a CD Projekt Red fan at all. I played The Witcher 3, and I really didn't like it because it was clunky. The controls didn't work, and the story didn't really catch me. Maybe it's because I didn't play the first two, but overall, the game just was, based around the hype, was disappointing to me.
Okay. And
that's what I'm kind of afraid of with this new one, because everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. And the thing is that, sure, the graphics are great, and the world, I love Cyberpunk. This Cyberpunk is not, its portrayal of daytime is not my preference, but it's still a great representation of the Cyberpunk genre. But my biggest problem is that, will it be clunky? And from the gameplay, as we saw, aiming down sights seemed a little bit not as smooth
as you'd expect.
And that might be because it's as you'd expect, but that might be because it's in early phases. But that's something to keep an eye on, and not just throw out the window. Well, like, oh, it's in early phases. I'm like, well, we gotta keep an eye on this with next iterations of gameplay. But my biggest issue with the gameplay was that it felt like you were just locking onto targets, like auto locking on. Which there's a difference between aim assist, so you're not aiming at nothing, and then auto aiming. And that's what I felt like. It was too perfect because it was using an Xbox controller. Whether or not it was on an Xbox, who knows?
It was probably on a PC with an Xbox
controller.
Yeah.
But then it was too precise. Like, there was no correction or anything. It was just like aim, locked, shoot. And so that's what I'm kind of afraid of, because I didn't feel like there was any challenge, at least in the gameplay they showed. And that's where I worry about it being, it being too easy. Because, like, the last thing I want is an easy game. Like, I love hard games. I don't like frustrating games. I'm not over here playing Dark Souls,
or Cuphead.
But I like Cuphead wasn't even that hard. It was slightly difficult compared to other like shoot 'em ups, like running guns. Like if you play Contra, you you can't even get past the first level of your summon.
I probably
can't
can't.
get past the tutorial. I can't, that's for sure. But you know, there are certain elements of the game that I wish were a little bit more challenging from it. However, I can't really judge all the gameplay because I haven't played it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I think
you know what? It's an RPG, and typically RPGs are not that much about a difficult gameplay if they have a shooting mechanic. Think about Mass Effect. I remember it wasn't that difficult to beat a boss or to.
Wasn't it a didn't it have different difficulty settings?
Yeah, it did, and I think Cyberpunk will as well.
Oh, it will.
I think so. I mean, I'd expect it to.
Yeah, and that's actually really reassuring because I would hate for the game to feel as if it was, you know, it was just too easy, like Grand Theft Auto, where it's like one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the discussion of, you know, what's the perfect difficulty? You know, is the you know, normal one, is that bad? You know, all this other stuff. Like, is normal too easy? Is hard too hard? What's the perfect one? You know, what's the perfect balance between hard and insane? Is one too difficult, one too easy?
I think it's up to anyone.
Stuff like that. Yeah, it's up to your preference. But,
Yeah.
You know, games like Grand Theft Auto or Mario or Zelda, where they have one difficulty, I think can sometimes be better than games that have multiple difficulties or scaling difficulties, because the developers have to fine-tune that for everyone, for hardcore players and you know, little kids that just convince their mom to buy this rated M game or whatever. You know, little kids can go play Breath of the Wild and have a blast, and people that are more veterans and like a lot more harder games can play it and feel just as immersed as the kid, because, you know, I can go take on a Lionel, or I can set up my own challenges by just trying to do stuff out of what they're telling me to do. And so that's what I am wanting, at least the game that is challenging but not frustrating. Something like Donkey Kong Country, you know?
Yeah, it should be a difficulty tailor-made for you and for everyone else. That's why there are more levels, there are more difficulties to choose from most games. I think games like Dark Souls, where there's no difficulty setting, I think those developers are really brave, because they're doing something really, really dangerous. Because yeah,
I think it's dangerous because, well, not just dangerous, but really not, I wouldn't say brave, but I'd say at least a lot more dedicated, because any game can make enemies' health higher and your health lower, and then just say, boom, boom, difficulty done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's a done deal. Like, I want a game that gives you challenge. Dark Souls are, they're another thing, for me at least, for Dark Souls. It can be a bit tough, because it just feels like everything's out to get you, and there is no, you know, it just feels like everything is tailor-made to kill you. And there's a difference between frustrating games and difficult games. Like when you pop in some Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, you know, you pop on guys and you're really focused in. All your focus is on it. You're not worried about anything else. You're not worried about the fly that landed on your face. You're not worried about, you know, your house burning down. You're worried about getting to the end of that level, connecting all those bananas, getting all the ABCs, you know? And that's what you're worried about. Whereas, is it ABCs or is it words? I haven't played it in like a couple of years. But when you play that, you know, you're focused in on it. And when you lose, you're like, oh man, but I got it this time. And I got it this time. Oh, if I only jumped there. But I feel like with the Dark Souls and stuff like that, and other games along the Soulsborne genre is that you keep dying and dying and dying and dying. It's just like, what am I supposed to do? I'm doing everything the game told me, and it's just, you just get frustrated and end up turning it off. And I think that's the biggest drawback for me from the Dark Souls games is that they're so difficult that they're not fun to play.
Well, I played many difficult games, and the first Souls-like game I played was Bloodborne. And
Bloodborne? I love Bloodborne.
Yeah, and it was the first difficult game that every time I died, it made me say, yes, I want to try again, no matter how many times I died. It's the first absolute game that made that effect on me. And Dark Souls, was about the same, but, I really loved Bloodborne setting, so I really wanted to see how the city looked beyond those walls I was trying to get past. So I really I really did my best to get through. While in Dark Souls, there's this sort of medieval setting that we've seen in tons of games, so there wasn't that motivation.
Well, I don't think it's just that. I think it's just the whole play style, because people look at that and like, oh, it's the same exact game because it's made by the same developer, but I'd argue they're completely different in fundamentals on how you interact with the world, how you interact with enemies. Dark Souls, you do some rolling and you put up your shield, and then once the enemy's vulnerable, you attack, and you repeat that until you end the game. But God, I don't know if it's my ADHD, but waiting is just the worst. It's like every game tells you to go forward, but the game just tells you to wait, and you just sit there for 40 seconds just doing nothing but just holding up your shield and pressing O or whatever. But with Bloodborne, even though it's made by the same developer, they don't give you a shield at all. You have no way of defending yourself besides skill. And that's what I love about it, is that you have to dodge those rolls perfectly so you can shoot the enemy in the back, get your sword, and just go shove it up their ass. And in some cases, that's true with the pigs, the giant warthogs. But the whole case of it is that you're stabbing. You're not just stabbing and using your shield, but you're using your weapon and you're dodging and you're just using all your abilities. And they what's the term for it? They encourage acting first. They encourage aggressive behavior. And the biggest part about that, I think, is about the aggressive behavior is that when you're hurt, you have the ability to go hurt the person back and take back your health completely if you're fast enough. Yeah. And if you're aggressive enough. So even it's punishing, but it's punishing in the right way where it gives you the opportunity to get back. Which I think Bloodborne takes the Dark Souls formula of being a very difficult Metroidvania and takes it to a new level. And I think that's what makes it so great and better than those. But, more about the normal conversation about fixed difficulties versus, other different difficulty levels, that I think is a huge topic. Yeah. But I think it's sometimes even better than just the way you interact with the world, like through difficulty and gameplay, is dialogue and choices in quests. Yeah. I think that can be the game's downfall or upbringing. And I think Cyberpunk does that really, really well.
Yeah, well, it is based on a tabletop RPG.
Have you played it?
No, I haven't. But I played other games like that. I did a what's it called?
Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, not Dungeons and Dragons, but Pathfinder.
Pathfinder.
Yeah, I played a small campaign of it. Just to try it out. It was an evening with my friends, and one of them was really, really expert in this kind of campaign making, and he said he'd make us try, me and some other friends, he'd make us try, but by making a very small adventure, like a 3-4 hours adventure. So that was it. And yeah, the very interesting thing that I found really well done in Cyberpunk in the demo was this kind of the freedom to take the approach that you want, and to have it really impact your experience. And I think it's a hard thing to do in a video game, because you have to be limited somehow. Because while in the actual tabletop campaign, you have a human deciding based on your action how the story goes ahead. There you have a game, a programmed game. It's a completely different thing.
Yeah, that's like my problems with other role playing games now, is that they're not role playing games. They have role playing elements. They have skill systems and skill points, stuff like that. But they're not. Those don't even matter. Those don't even matter. Like, coming from someone who's played Dungeons and Dragons and played Cyberpunk, I think it's important to allow your player to have choice, not just in dialogue, but in combat. You know, have the game play completely differently if you put more intelligence, skill points into intelligence, rather than, strength or coolness or whatever. Because otherwise, I feel like a game could really struggle, because it just feels like, take Fallout 4, for example. My stats don't matter at all. Like, I played through that game for like about 50 hours, and not once did my stats ever make sense. Like, they didn't affect my play style. I just played how I wanted to play. And so, with that, I think that with with giving the player, as they showed in the trailer, in the gameplay, not the trailer, but the gameplay demo, when they had, after they were in the hideout with the gang, and they got the deal down, but then the chip, the cred chip was rigged and killed a bunch of people, and they had a little shootout.
Yeah.
And the door's locked, and they said, like, if you put more skill points in intelligence, you could probably hack through this door. But you don't. So you have to use your other skills. And so they found the hole in the wall. And I feel like that is, the kind of freedom that you want in a game.
That is actually something I saw in other video games. I don't remember which ones, but I'm sure it was a long time ago. I mean, it's been a long time since video games have been doing this kind of precise simulation of what would happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a lot easier and more older games, where they didn't really have to make a huge, large rendered world. They just had to do smaller bits and pieces. But, it's the same amount of difficulty to make games back then as they are now. It's just that games are on bigger scales. And so I think what can really affect a game is that, at least for an RPG, at least is making the stats matter, making it feel like what I choose in the beginning and what choices I make in the game have an impact on not, and even just that quest alone, if I didn't choose to go to the lady, to the corporate lady, and ask for the cred, what if I just went in there? What if I went there guns blazing? What if I went there on my own terms? Like, so many different outcomes. And did they say this was a main quest or just a side quest, or did they mention that at all? I can't remember.
I don't think they did, but it looked like a main quest to me. I mean, if that's a side quest, it's even better, because I'm really looking forward to see what the main quests will be like.
I'm assuming that's the main quest. But what also piqued my interest is, from what they've said about it, is that this is more like the tabletop, in which, if you've played any our tabletop RPG for a long enough time with a group of friends, you know that you literally just don't care about the main quest. That's just really to get all your characters together, and then you just live off the side quest, you know? And maybe go back to the main one. Like, one time I had this huge story with my group about, you know, this guy, Osiris, and he was like this demon king in this pocket dimension that they had to go save their friend from. But instead they wanted to go, like, trick the town's ironsmith that they killed his son for him to attack him, and then they used, like, I forget, one of their magic users used some spell to make him forget, and then they say they saved his son, and then he gave them money, and then they just kept messing with this guy for over an hour, and it was fun. And, you know, you might not get that in this game, but they lived off those side quests where they just felt like whatever, and then they got a reputation in the game, like, oh, that was the hecklers or whatever. And so I want to at least play a game that I can just get lost in the side quests, and that my side quests do, like, almost like a reputation system, like in the Infamous games, but with the bounty system as well from Red Dead Redemption. You know, because that's the biggest thing with that I don't want it to become GTA. You know,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, you can do, like, I feel like that you should have the choice to make it like a GTA kind of thing, but I feel like if you kill people, your bounty will go up, you know, and you can get away because the police are just so hard to find. The world's filled with crime. But I feel like with a bounty system, you know, you could create really interesting moments where you just become this infamous crime lord who just kills people, you know, and maybe that'll make the difficulty harder. You know, maybe if you're a little bit more easygoing and a little bit more for revolution and talking your way out of things, and maybe you get a reputation as a good person, and you won't have a higher bounty. You might have a lower bounty, but as your evil reputation gets higher, so does your bounty, which means the difficulty is harder and harder.
Well, this is interesting. I mean, they could even put some quests that are locked behind a certain level of bounty.
No, I mean, yeah, well, that's what Infamous did, and that's what I never liked about that part of the game is that, oh, if you want to do this one thing, you can't do that anymore because you're not that evil in that part. Like, well, what if I just want to do this? It's like, well, you're just good now, so you can't do the evil thing. Like, even though if I think the person genuinely deserved to be killed, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not talking about actions. I'm talking about quests. Like, for example,
I know, but
someone
in the game. In Infamous Second Son or any of the Infamous games, there were quests where you had to choose an action, like a choice. But the thing is, if you got so good or so bad, you couldn't choose the other option. Like, let's say you're a bad character, but then you have mercy on one character.
Okay.
But they don't allow you to have to choose. And that's what I'm afraid of. If they did something like that, where you have to be a certain amount of evil to unlock a mission, that'd be hard for someone like to have locked out half the content if they just chose to take the good path. Maybe have a different kind of scenario if they were the good guy. Maybe the people would be more easygoing, or maybe they'd be more hostile. Maybe they try to take you hostage, you know? And I feel like that would be a lot better. For the game, is that allowing players to play any quest at any time, whether they succeed in that quest is not, is you know, up for whether how good you are, your stats and stuff like that. But I think keeping the player always on their toes and allowing them to do that. But as I was saying, like, the bounty system, like, have the morale system of it, but instead of limiting your gameplay and giving you powers based upon those actions, have a bounty system so that it's easier if you want to play more lawful. But if you're evil, you know, you can create this whole crime syndicate, and, you know, you'll be like this huge outlaw that you walk into a saloon and everyone just, you know, looks at you. Like, I think of it as a modern Western. I think Cyberpunk is a lot like that. It's like a modern Western, or technically a futuristic Western, because in the Western there is no law. The police aren't here by your side at every moment, and that, you know, if a criminal kills your family, whoop-de-doo, go hire bounty hunters to, you know, kill them, you know, and that's just how the world is. But I feel like if they had it like that in a, like, almost like a Red Dead Redemption kind of style, in a futuristic setting where you can make these choices, sure, but there will be consequences in it. You know, that random encounter that was 100% scripted. You know, of the person that of the goons that you killed in the beginning, attacking you on the road. Like maybe not scripted because I was 100% scripted, but like stuff like that, where like maybe you'll have more of those, and maybe, you know, you try to sleep and then you get woken up in the middle of the night and there's a fight, you know, a hand-to-hand combat fight, someone's trying to kill you, like things like that, where you just have to be, you know, on your toes. You know, you have to play a bit more carefully if you want to be that evil. You know, depending on your choices, you might be able to, you know, mow down an entire crowd, but there'll be repercussions for that. You'll have a higher bounty, not from just police, but from gangs and criminals. And because the whole thing of Cyberpunk and the Cyberpunk tabletop is that when you make choices, you're living in this world where you can your street cred will go up, you know, and people will respect you more, or people will just respect you less based upon your actions. And the whole thing is not about the main quest of, oh, we got to defeat, you know, the big corporation. Maybe it's just, you know, you just deciding what you want to do, you know, and you, based upon these side quests, you create this mentality of this RPG. Like, maybe you're a person that, you know, you only kill if you have to, and that's how you get known, and you're helping the little guy, because like if you saw the class system, they said who's your hero, and they had I think it was Johnny Silverchair, something like that, who was in the original game as basically a revolutionary pop star. And then they have a solo who's just a gun for hire. He's worked with low end people like Johnny Silver, whatever, but he's also worked with corporate people like the last one, which is the third one, which is basically a corporate god who doesn't care about anything but only the corporate agenda. And so, like, based upon those, that's almost like a class of a morality system. You know, maybe, you know, based upon the game, you can go as a solo and just be a gun for hire, or maybe you want to be a revolutionary and change the world, or maybe you just want to, you know, become a crime lord, you know. And I feel like giving the player the choice to do that, as the mobile version, not the mobile version, but the tabletop version did, I think it'd be really important and make the game feel better, and it would be a great design choice. However, it would be a very hard one, because making that much amount of choice in the game, it's going to take a long time.
Well, they are spending a lot of time developing this game, so I think they claim that they actually started development because, like Naughty Dog, when they try to become a 2-game studio, they try to make 2 games at once and end up just not working, and they just need to take the other team back to finish another project. Yeah, like they were trying to work on Cyberpunk as a concept, and they were going to plan on development, but they just, you know, The Witcher 3 took them too much. But still, effort. They did spend. I think I assume they spent a lot of time planning this, not just practically developing it, but planning it. Planning the game. So I think they could have they could think about these design choices. I mean, they sure have considered it. Then they have to see if that's doable, of course. But I mean, CD Projekt Red really they're like Rockstar Games. They release a game once in a while, and it's the best they can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think they said that instead of the game being very horizontally big, it's very vertically big. So instead of having, you know, wide plains to traverse, it's like you go up and down buildings. Like think of Coruscant, you know, which was Cyberpunk, which was ripped off of Blade Runner. But imagine these levels of the city. You know, maybe you go down like to the Undercity, or maybe go to the highest tops, or, you know. I think it's going to be a really small, like, rectangle map. If you're just thinking about, like, size of just, like, the square, it's going to be pretty small. But it's going to be pretty big, like, as in, it's going to be so...
volumetrically big.
yeah, like you can go down, you can go up, and there's like tons of different stuff, and it's all like compact there. And I think that I've never seen an RPG like that. Have you?
No, actually no.
And I think that's gonna make it interesting. It's gonna make it feel different.
We gotta see how
That's the
much,
big part.
how many of those, of the, what's the word? Damn it.
Houses, rooms,
Yeah,
levels.
how much of those levels are real and how many are fake?
Well, of course, there's not gonna be. I think there's gonna probably be like 5 or like probably like 10 like layers. I'm guessing.
Well, I hope so.
Maybe, but who knows? Maybe there might be 3. But I think having a world feel alive and
Yeah.
like you can interact with it and you can just go do whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about the main quest. And I think because the biggest part about game design is the feel of it.
Yeah.
And this doesn't look like it's doing a bunch of new stuff. It looks pretty fun, with slow motion, sliding and ricocheting bullets in slow motion and killing people. But I think that having the game vertical, so instead of exploring it like you're just traversing, a mountain, you're rather scaling up and down the mountain.
Yeah.
I think that could be really makes it feel different than any other games. Like think of it like Stanley Kubrick. He didn't invent sci-fi movies, and what he did in a lot of those movies, like he didn't invent genres, but more often he would come into a genre later and perfect it. Think
Yeah.
of The Shining. Like there's been no horror movie like it since, and a lot of modern horror is just all over the place. You got The Witch, and Under the Skin, but then you also get like Truth or Dare, where they have like weird like smiles and stuff. And nothing has gotten to the level of, The Shining. Maybe Under the Skin and The Witch. Those are really great horror titles, but those are far and few between. But he didn't invent horror. It's been around for a long, long time. But he came in there and made a movie so great that people still hold it to high regard. And I feel like that might be the same. This is the first Cyberpunk game, yes, but it's not the first-person shooter RPG, that, focuses on world exploration. It won't be the first one, and it certainly won't be the last, but if they can pull it off right and they can make the game fun and interesting and variety gameplay, I feel like the game could be marked down as one of those games along the lines of Breath of the Wild or Ocarina of Time or Grand Theft Auto or any of these massively popular games that are so cherished by many people. Like, yeah, some kids may have grown up with Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto, but, will newer kids grow up with Cyberpunk and look at that as I remember that, and sinking hours upon hours and hours in that game? Maybe.
Yeah, I think
Most likely it's going to be Fortnite, but it's going to be probably Fortnite and, Minecraft as they reflect fondly in their 20s and 30s. But I feel like Cyberpunk, if they pull it off correctly and they pull all the right punches, I feel like it could be a really great game that a lot of people will sink a lot of hours into.
Well, I really hope so. I mean, the problem about video games as a media is a bit like movies maybe. I mean, you want to do a video game this big, it's going to take a long time. So, for example, I started today. They started in, what was it, 2014, developing Cyberpunk, the first idea.
No, the first trailer came out in 2013, I believe.
Okay, 2013. Okay.
So probably, I think that was like early 2013.
So imagine this: you start developing a Cyberpunk game because you see people around, you meet people, and you guess it's a kind of a game genre that people might be interested in. But developing a game as big as this, you know it's gonna take like 5-6 years to make it right. So how do you know that people will be still interested in those things by the time the game comes out? I mean, it's a risk.
Introducing like older mechanics and then releasing them.
No,
Like
it's just
many
not
years
just
later.
about. It's not just about mechanics. It's about the ambient. I don't know how to say it. The idea of a game based in a cyberpunk universe. Maybe there's a fad for cyberpunk things in a certain period, and then there's no more. And how do you know?
Yeah.
So it's I think it's a very difficult things to do to make a very big game and try your best to make it right.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that the first ideas of the game probably started stirring around late 2011 because they said it was announced in May 2012.
Okay,
The
wow.
first trailer was in January 2013, and then dead silence for like 5 years, and then we got the trailer at E3, and then we just got gameplay. But they claimed that they started pre-production as soon as the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Blood and Wine finished. I said that around this time they personally had 50 staff members involved. Yeah, so basically the Polish government gave them a $7 million grant. Yeah, who funded the Red Engine 4. Yeah, so basically there's a lot of stuff like that that's been happening. But I think that the concept's been around for a while. And Cyberpunk's been always a very weird subject because it's been very popular in books and even a lot of anime, you know. There's a really great cyberpunk animes like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, which are some of the most celebrated anime, you know. Akira is considered one of the best, like along the lines of Cowboy Bebop and anything from, Studio Ghibli. And it's cyberpunk. And one of the best considered influential sci-fi films along the lines of 2001: A Space Odyssey is Blade Runner, which is cyberpunk.
Well, that's
this
still
is such a weird thing.
That one is still my favorite movie of all time.
Blade Runner?
Yeah.
The first one? Yeah. Which Blade Runner has a very the first Blade Runner was more important about setting up a world rather than a story, which is very different than more modern movies, you know. You watch, I have no idea what the world of whatever the newest Rampage movie is, but they're just trying to tell a story about to just convey action. Well, Blade Runner was never about that. It was about more of having an ambiguous story that was the underlining of an amazing, beautiful, not beautiful, but very beautiful to look at, but not beautiful to live in world full of all these unique things about it. And I think with Cyberpunk, it's having trouble differentiating itself from Blade Runner because Blade Runner is what is the go-to Cyberpunk, but so is Ghost in the Shell and Akira. And with one of my criticisms from the game, and this is my biggest criticism of it, along the sides of the gameplay looking a little too easy, is that I'm not afraid, but I know that I don't like the sunny aesthetic of the daytime. Because when I look at Cyberpunk, and even just, not even Blade Runner, but just Cyberpunk as a whole, Earth is probably being depleted of its sources. Everything's scrapped on top of each other. Technology from decades beforehand or being used as technology for now, you know. And we're already seeing that in real life, you know. I can plug my VHS player into my 4K Blu-ray TV, whatever, and watch, Eraserhead from like the 1960s, you know. Well, not the 1960s, but you know what I mean. And you can do that. And imagine that just kept going on for generations and generations and generations until you got to the point where everything's just stacked up on top of each other, and people are living in small houses, and the world is dying.
Yeah,
we've completely neglected the earth, and it's just foggy, overcast,
yeah,
hot. And I think that's the biggest, because Blade Runner 2049 does daytime in it, which I don't think they really did well in the first Blade Runner. And it's really nice to see daytime in the sequel, which I think is the perfect sequel I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
But that's up for debate between the fans.
I loved it.
One of the best movies. I loved it too. But what my favorite thing is that it did daytime perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't raining, but it was overcast and it was moody.
Yeah, all the time.
Because
yeah,
it's not a happy world. Cyberpunk's not a happy-go-lucky, chip on my shoulder, brush it off, and I'm gonna make myself in the world. It's more of you're gonna live in shit and you're gonna die in shit. Especially in the junkyard scene. All these people just living in a landfill. And there's orphanages there, and people just don't care. That's just how life is. As in some famous words, that's just how it be sometimes. People live in trash, and they hunt down people like Officer K who fly by and try to kill them and take their stuff to sell. And that's the harsh reality of the world. But it felt like, just with the first trailer, at least, the gameplay really reassured me of a lot of things. But with the first gameplay, it was really just the trailer was just like, it's just like, it felt like GTA.
Yeah.
And that's not what Cyberpunk is. Cyberpunk's not GTA. Cyberpunk is not just about, heist and crime and, all that stuff. But GTA, it's about the low life and the depression and the anxiety of the world, and just, in Blade Runner, because that's the best example of Cyberpunk in modern Western film, that, the world isn't great. Wood is considered a luxury. He says that little wood horse, the real wood horse that he had, that Officer K had, spoilers, but the little horse he had could take him off the planet somewhere new, get him a real nice house and lots of stuff. A real horse, and that's that's the world they're living in, where wood is considered rarer than diamonds. And that's the world that I think embodies Cyberpunk. And that's what I'm kind of disappointed with, is that the world is just so bright and just, the neon is supposed to represent, that's why it's supposed to be foggy and overcast with the neon signs, is that you have the depressing part, and then you just have these advertisements and all the light. Like, there's no light in the world besides neon shining in your face. And I think that's what made the Cyberpunk genre so unique. That's why I feel like Blade Runner it got it so right, while Cyberpunk's daytime just feels too, because I know because in the Cyberpunk board game or tabletop, it's a lot about fashion, but I feel like it just feels too, not childish, but it feels too over the top. And it's just like, it's you got bright sunny and palm trees and stuff. It just doesn't feel that great. That's why I'm glad I'm gonna buy it on PC. That way I can get everything to look, install some mods,
I already see the mods, the Blade Runner mode.
Just Officer K, get a spinner,
or just I would be happy with a setting that lets you select the day or night time at all times.
Well, I don't like mine. It's not like I hate the daytime. It's just that it's too bright and too clear.
It has to be made right, as you said. Blade Runner 2049 did it very well.
And so did, what's it called? And Ghost in the Shell did it really well. Like, it's still foggy and it's still overcast and stuff. But any final thoughts on the gameplay?
Well, it looks promising. I mean, there's a ton of interesting stuff. We have to see how it evolves. I hope they will keep us updated from now on. Now that they opened the lid on development.
Yeah, man. Dude, I can't wait till what year is it currently? 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I can't wait till 2023 to see the next trailer.
Yeah.
You know, I thought Kojima was bad with his updates every 6 months to a year, but damn, 5 whole years.
That's a new standard.
That's a new standard of announcing it. That's a little too early to announce the game. Well, technically, it was announced 2011. Yeah, so it's more along the lines of 7 years since it's been announced.
It's gonna be a 10 years trip, in my opinion. It will come out in 2020, 2021.
But the funny part about it is that it's only been developed for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's been in development hell for, 5 years, but only been developed for 2.
Well, that happens a lot lately, I noticed. Except with
developers announcing games too early and then completely changing the game. And that gets into our next topic with Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
So there's been a lot of stuff talking about Spider-Man today and this last week about these images floating around that the game got downgraded. So a lot of people on Twitter and Reddit and stuff were comparing the images, showing that the shadows were flatter, the shadows were muddier. Not the shadows, but the textures were muddier. The shadows were more shallow, very flat, not very dynamic. And the biggest part was Puddlegate. All the puddles were gone, and with all their beautiful reflections, and their blue sharp images.
Mm-hmm.
And those have been removed from a very early section of the game. And people have been claiming that Insomniac downgraded the game and didn't tell anyone about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so almost as soon as that happened, the community director went and basically said, no, we moved the sun and we removed the puddles because they didn't need to be there, which is a really odd choice, to just remove a lot of elements from it and make it look worse. And I think a lot of people can share the sentiment. Even people that are defending it and saying it's not a downgrade can admit that the one shown in 2016 and 2017 look way better than the one shown right now. Mm-hmm. And their explanation is that they moved the sun, which is really weird because I don't think the sun would make textures, worse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would make them muddy. I don't think it would make all the shadows very flat and very dull. I feel like if there was a sunset, the shadows would be sharper and a lot more prominent,
Mm-hmm.
than in the morning or the afternoon. And I think, I think that's the biggest problem is that people are seeing this and then they're feeling that the developer betrayed them, that the developer lied. And showed them a product that isn't a representation of the full game. Mm-hmm. Like people are not upset, but are okay with changing things. Like you look at Aunt May and Peter Parker. Peter Parker looks very different than he did in the announcement trailer, and a lot better. Aunt May gets a sweater.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest upgrade of all. She got a sweater. The faces look a lot nicer, and they added a lot more vibrance and a little bit more anti-aliasing. But, that's it. And there's been a lot of texture downgrading and people downgrading. And I saw a game developer on Twitter. It was like, people, show us gameplay. We just want to see it. Developer shows gameplay. Game comes out. This isn't exactly how you showed it. I'm like, well, yeah, but you're not forced to show the gameplay. I think a great example is Bethesda showing their games off like a year before they're about to come out. Didn't they do God of War?
Or the same year, like was 4.
Yeah. When was God of War announced? Was it announced in 2016 or 2017?
2016.
2016, so it was about a year and a half
before release.
Before it came out. Yeah, well, this game's almost over 2 years before it's released, and I feel like it could have been not rushed out, but released before it could get all its final polish, because there's a certain game in this window that they're going to have to compete really hard with in a very slim window, which is Red Dead Redemption 2, which is the biggest game this year. So I think, and that's why all the games are moved to early, like March and January, February, March, is because we're all going to release it in the fall. And then there's like, for Red Dead Redemption, it was like, we're releasing it in fall. And it was just like, okay, well, goodbye. The only person that's standing up to them currently is Call of Duty. But, nothing's going to stop Call of Duty sales. It's Call of Duty. People will buy it anyways, no matter how bad they think it is. But I think it's definitely concerning whether or not there is a downgrade. That's up for debate because we don't know yet because we haven't played it.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is that it looks worse.
Yeah.
At least in that specific scene, it looks worse than it did in the beginning.
I mean, I'm linking now to you a picture from Twitter where you see what I meant earlier. Before we started recording, I told you they used the excuse. They said, "Yeah, we just moved the sun. It's a different time of day." Well, here you see on the building right in front of Spidey, you see it's the same time. You see it's the same shadows, yet it looks worse.
Yeah, I think the problem is let me count this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like about maybe a couple inches away, so maybe an hour later. But the thing is what's the point of changing the time, moving the sun? Like, I would understand maybe if this was a dynamic mission and that you could access it at morning or night, but from what I've heard from other people is that you access this at a certain time of day. So that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, why would you remove the ground texturing? Why would you make, like, even with that, like, look at Spider-Man. Look how shadowed he is. And then look how, like, he stands out way too much.
Mm.
Like, it's like when those graphics mods that just increase saturation,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it just feels like. It's like they removed a lot of the puddles.
Yeah.
And I think they removed a lot of them because they couldn't handle them. Because they misrepresented the product because they announced it too early.
But it's not just the puddles. It's the suit.
It's the shadow.
I mean,
it's the suit. Yeah.
You look at the suit. There's a lot of reflections in the 2017 trailer. There's a lot of shaders going on. I mean, there is a downgrade. I mean, it's really jumps out at you.
Yeah, and like I was listening to some Funhouse. I like those guys, but I don't agree with everything they said. They said that they're like saying how, like, well, what are you doing? Like, just staring at the ground and trying to look for stuff? I'm like, well, no, that's like a huge graphical downgrade. Like, this is like some Ubisoft level shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, only Ubisoft does stuff like this. It's just like downgraded so much is that you can just see it with, like, some games do get downgrades, and that's fine if they have a small downgrade. Make something less shiny. But this amount of downgrading it to the point that it looks worse, and that they've removed details and they removed texture quality and shadows and reflections and puddles, and and people like I saw this Kotaku article that was so stupid. It's like, people who haven't played Spider-Man are upset that there's a puddle missing. I'm like, no, it's not about the puddle. It's about the principle.
Mm-hmm.
The puddle principle, as I'll call it now, which is if you release a trailer and show a game like a certain way, and then you ask and you beg and you tell the people you need to pre-order or you don't get this exclusive skin, and then you release the game and it doesn't look like the product you marketed, then people will be upset and they will feel lied to.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not there is a downgrade, who knows? But from what we could tell, the image looks worse. It looks flatter. The biggest problem is that the shadows are there is none.
Mm-hmm.
The reflections are gone because there are no puddles. the textures are muddied, you know, and that's the biggest problem, is that people feel lied to, and that if the developers came out and said, hey, we changed some stuff, you know, beforehand, people would be fine with that. And I think the biggest part is transparency. And right now, I don't think Insomniac was being very transparent. Like, even if you look at the windows, they're not as reflective as they were before in the background. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Some other stuff is better. Like, I feel like the trade-off is not as great as it should be. You know? And people have noticed, and people have called the developers and said, hey, is this a downgrade? And, you know, people are saying, well, the developers know more than us, and they're saying it's not a downgrade, so it's not. But I'm like, and I say to that, well, what stopped No Man's Sky? The developer said that everything you're seeing here is in the game. What about the holy grail of gaming? You know the holy grail is? It's The Witcher 3, who's developed by CD Projekt Red, who refused to say that, you know, there was a downgrade, and then afterwards, whoa, whoops, they admitted it was downgraded. And that's the thing, you can't trust developers based upon their opinion alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
Because, you know, it doesn't matter how trustworthy a developer is. The fact is that developers lie. And I'm not saying every developer does. I'm not saying Insomniac is. But you have people like Ubisoft that show you a product, and then it comes out and looks very different from than what they marketed it as. You know, think of even with Sony. They announced No Man's Sky as the PlayStation exclusive, but then, you know, the developers lied the entire time through development, and they didn't produce the product that they were promising and that they showed everyone. And I think that's the biggest point, is that people don't want to trust these developers anymore, because who are they going to trust? Because then they go to journalists, and the journalists here are just defending it religiously because journalists have become too cozied with developers, like to the point where it's alarming. You know, you see a film, and even, you know, film reviewers, they will fly out film reviewers and give them showings to even the worst movies, in movies that people wouldn't want, you know, and they would let them watch it, and if the critics that they knew would hate it. But instead, you can't trust a lot of these people. Like, if you've heard about Tom's Hardware, they wrote an article called "Just Buy It: Why You Should Get the New Graphics Card from NVIDIA," and how, like, it's stupid of an article that was, because how is this representing the product? You know, you are straight up. You can, when you read it, you know you're being lied to, and that it's a paid one, because I have another article saying why you should be hesitant to buy it, and that's because paid versus unpaid. You know, and the thing is that I'm not, you know, these people, because if they're not 100%, you know, this is the 10 out of 10 best game, they don't get a review copy. Think about Donkey or Angry Joe or any of those other people. You know, they didn't get review copies for God of War, but guess who did? The big journalist companies. And the thing is the game came out fine. But not giving out review copies to people that were actually criticize your game, that's the biggest scare with it. Is that you have you know, people, you know, that will call you slanderous for being concerned that there might be a downgrade, you know, and you know, but, you know, if Polygon writes a hit piece on ArenaNet because they fired an employee for harassing basically their source of income, you know, that's just them being the norm. And the thing is that the industry it's so wonky right now, and because the industry is so new, that they need to find their feet and understand where developers stand, where journalists stand, where consumers stand. Because right now it feels like the journalists and the developers against the consumer, and a lot of people are very scared that they've been lied to and that they ask for all this pre-orders and that you get these exclusive stuff and then they don't deliver in the product that they marketed.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, you can see the game now and you don't have to. I'm like, yeah, I never pre-order. I've pre-ordered one game in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Lego Star Wars for the Nintendo DS. And I was so disappointed that I never pre-ordered it again.
Yeah, well, I didn't play a lot when I was very young in the 90s. But the feeling I got from the video game world back then was that it was just a little restricted fan club where everyone was connected. I mean, developer, gamers, and journalists. It was just few people, very connected, and there was this relationship of trust that is lost today. Because things got so big. I mean, we got millions, tens of millions of PS4s in the world, and developers and journalists have to speak to a broader audience, and it's difficult for them, and they're scared of their reaction, and everyone knows about everyone is very
aware.
Is very aware of graphics, of what they want from a game. It's a very complicated sector to be working in. So I understand, but still, I mean, indie developers are showing the world that when you are sincere about what you are offering, people will reward you.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, your game can be shitty, but you say it's shitty right off, and people will try it, even if you said it's shitty.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is that games are very different than movies. Like, you go to a movie that critics might be raging over, but the average consumer will go like, "Oh, this is boring. It's just a drama about a guy who goes to space." But it might be most revered, science fiction movie of all time, and might have the highest, rating of any movie. But the average consumer might not like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get something like Rampage, or whatever weird rock movie that comes out that, critics give it like a 2 out of 10. But it makes like $1 billion, and then I was like, and then you see like the user review ratings, it's like 90%. And it's like, whoa, what the hell? But games are very different in the sense that the reviewer is the consumer. They're not looking for artistic nature. They're not looking for their dialogue. They're looking for how fun the game looks, how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
How does the story interact with the world? And so, in that sense, is that the reviewers are 100 times more engaged with the consumer than any other medium,
Mm-hmm.
and that basically the reviewer is the consumer. But the thing is that if you criticize a game, you don't get a review copy anymore, and now your site doesn't have its review up first, and there's no traffic to your site. Therefore, less people see the ads, then less money. And it's like this weird ways that, and a lot of this would have no problem if they released demos. I'm surprised why those died. Like, considering we're in the modern era of games where you can just download anything on a whim. Like, how hard was it to get demos during, the PS2 era? You just had to wait until Pizza Hut made a demo disc, But now you can download anything automatically. So I'm like, that's why don't they just release a demo? If they have a working demo at PAX and E3, why can't they just release that? That's my biggest question, is like, why can't they just release it? If it's in playable form, if it's a short 10-minute, 20-minute, 1 hour, whatever demo that people get to play, and that's restrictive on where you can go, but you can play around with the controls and get a taste for the gameplay, then why not release it? You know? I had fond memories of playing demos from Xbox Live and just playing them for hours on end, just repeating them until I bought the game, until it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like developers don't do that anymore because the game might be criticized and people might not buy it because it's not the product they want. And they've mismarketed it. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like so many of the major issues with this game could be solved if they gave us this part of the game, the entire part, and they gave it a little demo, that we could play on. But they don't. And then we just have to rely on these, journalists that insult the consumer and just suck up and brown nose the developer so far that you can't even, differentiate who's circle jerking who,
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the opposite side of the circle jerk, which is like Reddit r/gaming, where they just like, they get off to hating EA despite buying their game still, and and then you got like people like I'm not buying the game ever from the developer, and then a week later like they just put over 200 hours into the game. It's like, okay buddy, calm down. You're okay buddy, rise up a different day. Veronica's not going anywhere. Jesus, like these people, like they would like, and the thing is instead of standing by their thing, standing by saying that they don't like something and not buying it, they just continue to do it. But I think this year has been a huge change. Like, take The Last Jedi. People didn't like that. And then Disney was like, you're sexist, you're racist, you're whatever, because you didn't like it. And so people said, you know what? I'm not going to watch the next Star Wars. And they're like, you're bluffing. No one saw the next Star Wars. Battlefield said, well, we're not going to actually have an authentic World War II setting, and we wanted to make it more inclusive to everyone. And people said, well, that's not what World War II was like. It was lots of men that died, and and I don't feel like this represents World War II in this setting. And they said, accept it or don't buy it. And so nobody bought it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest part, is that if you want to be upfront with your consumer, then do that. But if Insomniac is not telling their consumer that they've changed it, and you've already given them their money because they're begging for it, basically fund development, then why wouldn't you just let us know?
Yeah.
I think that's the hugest, the bigly, question is, why wouldn't they just tell us? Like, how hard is it to make a post or, a little video saying, hey guys, or sorry, it doesn't look exactly like it, but we wanted it to run better, and this might be a trade-off, but it might be better for the overall gameplay, and,
Yeah, I mean,
we're sorry that
people
it
would
doesn't
accept it. I mean, I know I would.
I would be disappointed, but
I mean,
I'd rather be disappointed than angry.
Yeah, I would be a little bit disappointed, but I would accept it because I would appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
While doing what they are doing now, it only makes the problem seem bigger than it is.
Yeah. And then, like, this problem that should have been a problem is now a huge controversy for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not doing great for marketing. That even their fans are like, what happened? Why would you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people are very upset. And, instead of saying, hey guys, that's not how it is. And, it's just, different beforehand. The way they didn't tell the consumer, and then when people start pointing them out, and then you got journalists saying over here like, well, you didn't play the game, so you don't know what it is. Like, well, okay, well, I don't get to play the game because the developers don't give me a demo, and the people that should, that have played it are just insulting me instead. You get Kotaku and Polygon, you're just stupid and I'm smart. Like, no, we both have eyes. Just because your eyes get to see the gameplay, and play it, and, you get a little handshake, with a $5 slipped in from Insomniac, doesn't mean you're smarter or that you know more.
Yeah.
I can convince anyone, to give me, if I tell you, hey, I'm going to give you free dinner at this new place that my friend opened up. You would have a very different impression if you went there and spent money because you got the product for free. What if I said, well, you get it before anyone else, this exclusive dinner. You get the whole restaurant to yourself,
Yeah, it's psychological.
Imagine, psychologically, like, oh, I'm special.
Mm-hmm.
And I get this before anyone else, And I get it for free. Like, this is amazing. It might be mediocre, but you'd had an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people like ACG, he buys every single one of his games and then he gives it away on his Patreon, which I think is a very great thing for both his fans and for him to have integrity. And that's why people have lost a lot of respect for journalists. Donkey's video, Video Game Donkey's video on game reviewers, right? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's a perfect example is that they don't, they have these such great relationships, and that there's no honesty, that you don't know who's this coming from, and it's so disorganized is that you just don't know what's happening. Like, you go to watch a movie review, and it's usually from the same amount of critics. You go to IGN or GameSpot or wherever, 10 plus reviewers. A lot of them, they don't even, like, there's one person that reviewed Final Fantasy Zodiac, like, had no other writing credits. It's like, who is this person? Like, why do I trust their opinion? And that's what people trust, they trust YouTubers more, is because they're honest, they are upfront about their faults and what games they don't like, what games they do like, and they're honest and they're upfront about it, and they don't always get review copies because of that, and that's why a lot of people have a lot more respect for them than any news outlet. And then, a consumer like Ouija Plays, he got Sonic Forces, beat the game in like a little over 2 hours. I was like, well, that was not what I expected, and so he went to Steam and requested a refund and got it. And then like Polygon wrote this, was it Polygon? I think it was either Polygon or Kotaku, and this like, streamer abuses refund system on stream, or like some like stupid bullshit. Like, no, they show up like, hey, there's this game, buy it, and then you buy it. It's like not what you expected at all, and so the person returned it and he got a full refund.
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean,
it's like, if you want people to buy your game, you got to represent it. If you're charging $60 for a game and it's 2 hours long, don't expect people to keep it. But and he was honest. But then you have these reviewers like having these journalists having a superiority like complex, thinking they're better than anyone else because they got exclusive, or they think they're smarter because they went to they spent $40,000, $200,000 going to like journalist school, but they can't even spell check their own articles. It's just like a stupid subject entirely. It's like everyone should be in like unison, like journalists and players alike should be like, this is not okay. And when people say have a civil dialogue, people will just insult you and say like, well, you're just toxic Xbox fanboy. I'm like, I don't even own an Xbox. You're just assuming because I criticize a Sony game that I am an Xbox fanboy. But no, it's the quite opposite. I would be more of a Sony fanboy. It's tiring. Do you have any other opinions on this stupid subject that is a debate that shouldn't even be a debate?
No, well, I think you explained it pretty well, and I think our eventual listeners will agree, because it's very it's quite glaring. It's quite a glaring problem. So yeah.
My biggest problem is that I probably talk too much and you don't talk enough.
Well,
what happens is I need to learn Italian, and that way I will talk less and you talk more.
Yeah, well, you might think it's nothing, but I only get to speak English when I speak with you or the others before you. So we haven't been recorded, as you said, for like 2 or 3 months. So English
about 3 months.
My English is a bit clunky at the moment. So it's gotta come back.
Yeah.
It will eventually.
It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of. I can understand you better than even some Americans. You know, like there's some people I know. They're like, I'm like, excuse me. Like I don't even know what you just said right now.
What language is that?
Like it's English, but some form of it. You know, you go to Belfast, you can't understand a single thing. Even though they're speaking English, it's just so many different, different slangs, and they talk very differently because of their accents, and so like we wouldn't be able to like communicate,
Mm-hmm.
But any last opinions on anything in journalism? Any other final topics of who, what, where, and why? Game recommendations, anything like that?
Well, I finished God of War finally, because for my I had to study a lot, and I didn't even have time to play games, even to turn on my PS4, and and it was great. I mean, I really liked it, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's a certain scene that makes you understand that this is the beginning of a new trilogy, or at least a part 1 of a 2-part game. So yeah.
Spoiler alert. Iron Man dies in this one.
I really liked it, and then again I found out that the piece of the place where I was stuck and I couldn't go ahead, it was the final boss battle. Turned out to be the final boss battle, so I was really close to finishing it.
I still haven't played it yet. Like I've played it, but I haven't like played it. You know what I mean? I've probably played about maybe 5 hours of gameplay, but I haven't sat down and just played straight through it. I've been in kind of burnout of games, just don't really care. Just like it's fun for 5 hours and then I'm done. Like there's nothing that intrigues me. Who knows what that could be? Could be anything. Could be me not enjoying games as much. Maybe developers.
You should try different genres. For example, I decided now I played like 3 or 4 JRPGs last year, and when I played the last one, when I played Ni no Kuni, which is a great JRPG, I eventually got sick of it. I mean, and I decided, okay, this year, 2018, I'm not playing any JRPG, and then next year maybe I'll go back to it and maybe rediscover some of those I lost along the way, because I love the genre. But if I play too many of them in a single period, in a certain period of time, I won't even enjoy it as much as I would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like if you eat your favorite meal every day, then it's not gonna be your favorite meal anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
But my biggest thing is that I play the JRPGs are like the only games I don't play.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the only games I can't stand because of I just don't like waiting in games.
Mm-hmm.
I hate turn-based combat. I absolutely despise it. I think it's the opposite of fun. I think it was around for a time when we couldn't really do a lot of good gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have games that are a lot more fun than them. And
Ni no Kuni is not turn-based, but it's still a very JRPG game. Theme, settings, those things. And
aren't they like 800 hours long? Like I was reading about like Xenoblade, and like people were like, yeah, it's about like the main story is like 200 hours, and there's like 500 tutorials. I'm like, yeah, it's not my thing. It's just like I want a game that I can just sit down and play without thinking. I can just play and just enjoy it. Like okay. I need like I don't need it. I don't think I should have to read every single thing. I think I think you're just adding mechanics and complexity for the sake of complexity rather than the sake of improving gameplay. That's my biggest thing. Is like I just can't stand them.
It's a very different it's a very different kind of game. JRPGs are very, very specific. I mean, you love them or you hate them. And I love them, but I really needed to take a break from them because I played too much of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I played like puzzle games. I've played, action games. I played linear games. I played open world games. I played sandbox games. I played first-person shooters. I played third-person shooters. I played hack and slash. I played anything at your heart's content. And just like nothing's been keeping my attention so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, there's so many great games, but just like nothing's new. Nothing's different. And that's my biggest thing. Is why I've not been really keeping up with a lot of new games. Like nothing feels different. Like, yeah, you can go play. If I play, The Witcher, or I play, Assassin's Creed Origins, or if I play Skyrim, or if I play, whatever, I'm getting the same exact experience. It's an open world, semi-RPG with side quests, and you can roam around in it. It's like they're all the same kind of copy and paste template, and then they all play out the same of a skill branch and all that. So I'm kind of hoping maybe I'm kind of excited for Death Stranding. This is gonna be something completely new, and I hope it's something new and that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But I think we're coming to an end here. We're recording about 22 minutes, 1 hour and 22 minutes.
Yeah.
Want to plug anything? Do you have anything to shout out?
Shout out to myself at how much a beautiful person I am, and that's it.
Ooh. Do you have any Twitter handles or anything? Or
oh well, yeah.
Or whatever
I am at hiatus, which is very difficult to. Maybe you'll put that on the video or something because it's AHY.
It's on the screen.
TYS, yeah. That's my Twitter, and Danny Nevio is my Instagram. I'll probably write that on my Twitter so people can find me easily. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm Mitchell L. Virgil on basically every social media, which is my only two are Twitter and Instagram. I don't ever post to Instagram. I post there rarely, but I'm always active on my Twitter, so I suggest you follow me there. It's Mitchell L. Virgil, no spaces or capitals. It's there on the screen and in this description, so you can find it there. If you want to hear my ranting opinions and hot takes, my newest one is about how, EA isn't evil. You're just stupid. Maybe that'll be the next topic of the next episode. And I'll get some death threats. I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the By Design podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and hope you turned off your ad blocker. But, By Design is a podcast dedicated to game design and development discussions. So if you like what you're doing, if you like what we're doing, subscribe. Or if you don't subscribe. Let us know in the comments how we could improve or not improve. Just let us know. Give us honest feedback so we can make the show best and tailored to you, the viewer, the listener, technically. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.
See you.